Hello world! Today I'm going to show you how to make your own DIY Z palette out of a book. Hey everybody, Shelly here, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own DIY Z palette or magnetic eyeshadow palette from a book. Now, I take zero credit for the method here. I learned this method from a video that I had watched by Shelly Hokanson, and I will link her video down below. But I will show you how I made a few of these and my tips for getting them to turn out just how you want them. Now, if you don't know what a Z palette is, this is a Z palette, and it's basically a pan that you can store all of your eyeshadows. These are Makeup Geek eyeshadows in my Z palette, and the bottom is magnetic so that you can easily remove and replace the products that you've got in your Z palette. And because it's magnetic, you know, they don't fall out, so it's good for travel, it's good for storage. Now, most of the official branded Z palettes have the clear plexiglass cover that you can see through, but I'm going to show you how to make these out of books. So I've made a few of these. So I'm going to show you how to make something similar to a Z palette out of books. So what I did is I went to Goodwill and I picked up a few books, and I found a whole bunch of these Time Life series hardcover books that I thought would be great for big old Z palettes. And I do recommend using a hardcover book, and you want something that has at minimum the depth that you'll require for whatever you're going to store in it. In my case, I just want to store eyeshadow pots, so you know, 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch thickness, plus any space so that they don't, you know, get hit by the cover. And so I made a couple of Z palettes. This is one of my first ones, and I've got nothing in it right now, but it's got the space to put all of my eyeshadows or depotted makeup. I made another one with a smaller inside, Ancient Egypt, and used a picture from the content of the book on the inside of that one. I found a book at Goodwill from the series of unfortunate events books, like these little childhood books, and I thought this was great, so I made a Z palette out of this one. And the one I'm going to show you in this video is one that I made out of a blank book that I had purchased. I got this, I think, at Barnes & Noble, and I like this one because it's just got the magnetic closure built in, and ta-da! It becomes a Z palette. So we're going to walk through everything that you need, and I'll show you a demo of how I made this one, and we will get this going. So, yikes! So the supplies that you will need first would be a book, hardcover preferably. It'll be a little more stable and a little easier to stack and store with other palettes on your shelf. You should get yourself a pair of scissors, an X-Acto knife. You'll want a surface that you can cut on, so if you've got a cutting mat or a cutting board or something like that, or you can just put down a big sheet of cardboard or something. You don't want to cut directly into a table or anything that might get damaged. You may or may not need a ruler, but I had one just in case. You're going to need a pencil, some Mod Podge, which is a water-based glue sealant kind of thing. I used the matte Mod Podge. I don't know if you can see, but they also make a glossy luster Mod Podge. I have not used this one yet, but I'm sure I will. You will also need sheet magnets. Now, these come in a few different forms. At Michael's Crafts, I was able to get a roll of magnetic sheets that these are the ones that I used for the larger books because they're 12 inches by 24 inches in the roll. So when you unroll it, it's just a big roll of magnet. The downside of this large sheet roll is that the magnet strength on it is only a strength of 1. A strength of 1, while it does work, it's not a super strong hold. So I find that the strength 1 level magnet, it holds my Makeup Geek eyeshadows in, and I can kind of tip it, but they sometimes fall out. Like the smallest little jolt, if it's tipped, will make them fall out. So I'm not super comfortable with the magnet sheet power of 1. The other option is to get stronger magnets. Now the only ones I could find, and I think I got these at Hobby Lobby, are these craft magnets, and they're cut in sizes of typical photographs. So there's like 2.5 by 3.5 inch and 4 by 6 and 5 by 7, and that's as big as they are. But these are listed as a strength of 2, so the magnet is a little bit stronger, and this magnet I'm comfortable with. I would love to find even a slightly stronger magnet to use in a sheet magnet form for these Z palettes, but I have not been able to find such a thing at any of my local craft stores. So I would say if the only thing you can find is the strength 1 magnet, it's okay, but the strength 2 holds quite a bit better, and if you can get even slightly stronger, probably even better. Once you've got your supplies ready, it's time to make yourself a Z palette. First up, you want to prepare your book. Now this is just a blank book that I had picked up. You're going to need an X-Acto knife, and what I'm going to do here is remove that very first page. I want to use this as the sort of cover for the bottom of my pan. So you may or may not have a first page there to use. You want to be careful when you remove any of the first pages because you don't want to pull them out of the binding there. I'm going to use the matte version of the Mod Podge as my sealant, and what we're going to do here is seal up the edges of the book so that it becomes one solid piece. And the Mod Podge is going to adhere the pages to the back of the book and adhere all the pages together. Now I'm taking a couple pages in the front. You're going to need at least 1 page in the front that you can use to cover your magnet. So if you want to have some pages in the front that act as a regular book, then you're also going to want more than the 1 page, but you'll need at least 1 page to act as a cover when you put your magnet in. Make sure that you go all the way around and get the Mod Podge all the way to the back cover of the book, because you both need to adhere the pages together and you need to adhere the whole group of pages to the back of the book so it becomes one solid thing. Be careful not to get any Mod Podge sort of outside of that area. If you do, just wipe it off with a Kleenex or a rag of some kind. Then put some heavy things on there and let it dry for about 20 minutes. Now we're going to do 2 coats. 15 to 20 minutes should be good in between coats, and just go back in and fill in any spots where their pages weren't adhered. Make sure that the book is adhered to the back panel, and just give everything an overall second coat. Let that dry for 20 minutes or so, and now we're going to measure the magnet. Now in this case, this magnet's a little too big, but I'm going to roll with it anyway. You want to give yourself probably at least 1/2 inch, closer to 3/4 inch around that magnet, so that you have kind of a thicker base around the sides of your palette. I traced the magnet, and now I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to cut out the center of the pages. Now this very first cut is a pretty important one, so be careful. If you are under the age of 18, you are going to want to get help or approval or permission to do this from a parent or guardian, because this can be dangerous. Once you've got these sides cut out, just go in and lift the pages out. Now, when you get a page that is stuck in a corner,
you do not want to just pull it out and tear it out, because you're going to start getting gunk in the corners. You're going to get pages, little leftover pieces of pages in the corners, and then your magnet's not going to fit in properly. So you need to keep those corners as absolutely perfect as possible. And it gets difficult the deeper you get. Now, the other thing is that depending on how your pages are made, if they're very flimsy paper like this, it's a little more tedious to be careful around the corners. If you've got really old books and the pages are old and they're not really even anymore and they're of varying thicknesses, that gets troublesome too. So just be careful and keep going. That's going to take you about an hour to do that part. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm deep enough with an eyeshadow pan and my magnet, and I decided to go just a little bit deeper in this particular case because you want to make sure that the lid is not going to hit your eyeshadow pans or your makeup pans. Now I'm going to cut the magnet to fit, and I'm not very precise about this. You might want to be more precise, but I'm really not. I'm not a super crafty person. So I just made it fit as well as necessary, double check the fit. Everything looks good, so that's how we're going to roll. The next step is going to be to seal up the book. So first go through and clean up any extra bits, get any extra pieces out of there. And we're going to seal up the inside of the sides of that pan, so the place where you cut all of those pages out. Now there is one step that I should have done before I started throwing glue down on here, and you'll see why it's a pain to do it the way I did later, but when we get there, basically I should have cut the X into the center of the page that's going to go over this area to seal up the magnet, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So you might want to do that first before you start putting glue down. But I put my glue down, and now I'm going to place my magnet into the center and just make sure it's even and press it down as well as you can. Mine's a little too big. I should have cut it just a little bit more. So here's the step I should have done before I put glue down. You're going to take one of your pages, the one that you are planning to use to cover up your magnet, and just cut an X in it, but don't go all the way to the edges. You just do it on the inside where you've got the space cut out for your palette. Then you're going to put some glue down, and you're going to make sure that this page fits nicely over the edges of the palette. Close the book, press it down, make sure it's nice and solid. And then we're going to use the area where we cut out to make a nice edge along the side of the palette, and just use your fingers to tuck the paper into that edge. That's why we cut it in the center, because you are going to end up creating a little bit of a gap there, but we're going to cover that up with a decorative page. But push it in as good as possible, smooth it all out, and then press it all down into the glue. Now here is my decorative page, and I'm again not being very precise, but I'm going to cut it to fit, and I'm going to cut it a little too much because I suck, but hopefully you will have a little bit better luck there. So once you've cut it to fit, put a little Mod Podge down, and that will adhere your decorative page over the magnet. I had to cut a little extra strip, but whatevs, it's all good. I also put this in backwards. It should have been the other way around, so my decorative page is upside down. But hey, that is the imperfection known as anything I attempt to do craft-wise. Now I am putting a final coat of Mod Podge on here. This is to protect the inside of your palette from makeup and shadow and fallout and whatever, liquid, anything. You just really want to give it one sort of protective covering. Now it looks like you're covering up whatever decorative page you had, but this is going to dry clear, so really you just want to make sure that you don't have any extraneous texture over your decorative page. Make sure the inside is completely covered so that it's protected, and you're also going to want to go around the edges and make sure that the edges are protected. And you see, let it dry. This is overnight, and everything dried clearly. Everything is solid. It's all one piece. My eyeshadow stays in the pan. Everything's good.
And here is the finished product. There you have it. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial on how to make your own DIY Z palette out of books. If you guys do make your own Z palettes, please leave a comment down below. I would love to see what you came up with. I am not a terribly crafty person, so mine are very imperfect, but they're imperfect like me, so I think they're just fine. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for stopping by and spending some time with me. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.